Hey everyone, Mr. Berta here. Um, Glad you all are stopping in for a quick review for the AP Biology exam. Today I'm going to be doing a brief overview of one of your favorite units, Biochemistry. So let's just go ahead and get started. Don't be too intimidated by it. First, we're just going to take a look at the course at a glance to see what you actually need to know. Um, as you can see, it's only about 8 to 11% of the weighted part of the exam, so not a huge portion. You need to know about how water is structured and hydrogen bonding. You can see here the elements of life, um, intro to macromolecules, what are their properties, their structure, and you need to know something about DNA and RNA, which you should be pretty familiar with at this point. So let's go ahead and dive into it. I might be jumping around a little bit, but we'll see here. See what you remember. Okay, let's start from the beginning. So, what are the main molecules of life? And then we're going to get into properties of water. So, take a moment to think about it. What are the main elements of life? You can pause the video if you want. Try to think that up. If you said chinops, you would be correct. So you guys probably remember, let me get my pen going here. Chinops. And we know that stands for carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur. So where are they mainly found? Carbon and hydrogen is pretty much found in everything, especially when you're talking about fats and carbohydrates. So carbs are your sugars and fats for long-term energy storage. Where is nitrogen found? Take a moment to think about that. If you said, and might be a tricky one, nitrogen is mostly found in amino acids, which are in proteins. So I'm going to say amino acids. And they are also found in DNA. Think about deoxyribonucleic acids. The nucleotides are actually made up of nitrogen, the nitrogen bases. Oxygen is found a lot in carbs, as well as fats. You see some oxygen in fats. Phosphorus, where is phosphorus found? Phosphorus is mostly found in the phosphate sugar backbone of DNA. And sulfur, where is sulfur found? It's not found in DNA. It's not found in carbs or fats. Sulfur is going to be found in your proteins or polypeptides. But those are your main elements of life that make up 95% of all living things. Yes, there are some trace elements in there, like maybe potassium or sodium, but all in all, these are your main elements. So that checks off elements of life. 1.2, topic 1.2. Let's take a look at topic 1.1, the structure of water and hydrogen bonding. So for that, I'll go ahead and pull up my PowerPoint here. So the properties of water, obviously, water is the most important compound on Earth, the molecule. Water is, of course, H2O. You have your oxygen and your two hydrogens. The oxygen is partially what? Positive or negative? It is partially negative. The hydrogens are partially positive. So two opposite charges means that this molecule is polar. How does it bond with other waters? Well, we know that opposites do attract. In this case, you can see here in this model, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 waters, and they're all bonding to each other. How are they doing that? Well, you can see here the opposites are attracting. So the opposite charges, which is the negative part of the oxygen, is bonding to the partially positive part of the neighboring hydrogen, forming a hydrogen bond. This bond is weak, which is why water has all of its interesting properties, which we'll go into some of those properties of water here in a moment. But what kind of bond holds a water molecule together? That's a trickier question. We know that this is a hydrogen bond here, but what about the one that holds the actual water molecule together? Well, the one that holds the water molecule together is a bit stronger, and that is a covalent bond. And it's not letting me write there, but there you can see something that holds water together is covalent. Stronger bond than hydrogen. Hydrogen is weak. These bonds are constantly being made and broken all the time, which is why water's fluid. Adhesion, cohesion. I like this picture of the spider web because it shows both. What is adhesion in this picture? Adhesion is the little water droplets are actually sticking to the spider web. They're not just rolling off. The hydrogen bonds are bonding to the spider web itself. There's opposite charges going on. What about cohesion? Well, you see here how the bubbles are forming. Waters are sticking to other water molecules. They're cohesive together. That's forming the water droplets. So you have adhesion and cohesion. Why do those two properties form in water? Hydrogen bonding. Sorry for my sloppy handwriting. This is why I normally type, but I'm trying to be more personalized. So those are properties of water. Solubility. What about solubility? How does water dissolve one of the strongest forces in nature, which is an ionic bond? Excuse my dogs in the background. Water is able to dissolve. It's a universal solvent, and it can dissolve ionic bonds. And the way that it does this, in the case of salt, NaCl, you know that you can put some salt in a cup of hot water and it dissolves pretty quickly. So what's actually happening is sodium itself is positively charged and chlorine or chloride is going to be negatively charged. So what these waters do is they surround each of these elements. They surround the sodium, they surround the chloride, but how do they surround it? They surround it and pull them apart using opposite charges. So the negative part of the oxygens are surrounding the positive sodium, and it's going to be vice versa for the chloride. So here you're going to have your hydrogens, which are positively charged, surrounding the chloride ions, and that's going to pull them apart. And that's how it's able to dissolve most things. Unless you're talking non-polar molecules like fats. It doesn't work with fats, which is why you can't mix oil and water. How do you actually make two bonds? I thought I had a better picture for this. Let me go back. So we're going to discard this. If I go over to my drawing tool again, let's see. Okay, we'll erase all this. If I have two sugars, let's say I have a sugar here, a sugar, and a sugar. How do I join those two sugars together? And in fact, there's going to be an OH here, and there's going to be an OH here. So you should say that to join two sugars together, if I'm adding them together to get this, you must take out a water. So here I'm removing two H's in the O, and I guess I could highlight this. I'm removing H2O, and I'm forming a bond. That is called dehydration. Dehydration synthesis. What if I want to split this water up, What if I would like to split this sugar in half? It's simply the reverse. So if I add water back in, it's going to then cause this reaction to go the other way, and it's going to split the two waters apart. That's called hydrolysis. So to build things, dehydrate it, take the water out. To digest things or break them apart, add a water. Hydrolysis. Okay. Moving on, transpiration. We're almost through water here. Transpirational pull. This is when water is pulling up a plant. It's using two forces. The water is binding to the edges of the stem. That is adhesion. And also waters are moving up the center of the plant, bonded to each other, known as cohesion. And on top of that, water is also evaporating out of the top of the plant. And that evaporation is causing all of this water, as well as the adhesion and cohesion, to pull up the plant. And that's actually known as transpiration. And this is how plants get water all the way up from the roots to the tippy top. Adhesion, cohesion, and evaporation make transpiration. Water is also a temperature buffer. Here you can see this glacier sitting in this water, and it's not melting right away. Water has a high specific heat and high heat capacity. What does that mean? High specific heat means it takes a lot of energy to raise the temperature of water. It's not easy to do. That's why, you put a pot of water on the stove. It takes a lot of heat to get that boiling, and it takes a while. Vice versa, it also has a high heat capacity. If you take that hot pot of boiling water off of the stove, it's able to stay hot for quite some time. You don't want to just stick your hand in that 2 minutes after you boiled that water. It has a high heat capacity. This does play a role with ecosystems, as far as if you go next to the ocean, you're going to notice that in the dead heat of the summer, that right by the ocean water, it's a lot cooler because it's actually able to absorb a lot of the heat from its surroundings and kind of maintain a more homeostatic temperature. You're going to have much hotter temperatures in areas where there's no water. So as well as for us, we're able to heat up our body temperature, and we're mostly made of water. And then when we heat that water up in our body, we're able to maintain our body temperature of 98.6 degrees. So definitely we need the high heat capacity of water for us to survive. All right, so I'm going to stop that video here. And next time, I'm going to post another video very shortly. And I'm just going to go over the different 4 types of macromolecules. And again, don't worry too much about biochemistry. I know it's a very difficult topic, but it only covers about 10% or less on the actual exam. So I'll make sure we hit all the high points. And after the next video, we will have covered all of it. So I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.